I'm standing behind the small podium in our backyard. The late afternoon sun filtering through the maple leaves, casting dancing shadows across the tables. Guests are gathered around, glasses of champagne glinting in their hands. I can feel my heart beating against my ribcage like a drum. It's our 10th anniversary celebration. Something my husband, Mark, insisted we throw in grand style for weeks. I've watched him bustle around, coordinating caterers, musicians, even a projection of our wedding video against the garden fence. He thought I'd be content to smile and raise my glass like everyone else, never mentioning the argument that shook us to the core last night. After the last of the guests left my office on the top floor, Mark and I stood in the darkened living room, the clock ticking past midnight. He held a crumpled letter in his hand. The handwriting too familiar, my sister's handwriting. My breath caught when I read the first line. "I'm so sorry I told you so late." He spilled the truth. Then, voice cracking, that he'd heard from my sister about secrets I'd kept buried for years. Things about my past in college, my fleeting indiscretions. Moments I never intended to share with him or anyone. I remember the sting of betrayal when I realized he'd gone behind my back to learn what I'd hidden. Not once did he turn to me and say, "Please tell me." Instead, he tracked down my sister, coaxed her into revealing every detail, then confronted me. I felt exposed, raw, as though he'd torn off my skin and held it in his trembling hands. He said he needed to know if I had truly changed, if I could be trusted. His voice was firm at first, but by the end, it was laced with fear that the woman he married wasn't the one standing before him now. We argued until tears streamed down both of our faces. I shouted that my past was nobody's business but mine, that I had earned the right to privacy after all these years of honesty and devotion. He cried out that marriage meant transparency, that every secret built a wall between us. I felt the floor drop out from under me when I realized how little he'd known me. How little I'd let him know. By the time I stomped upstairs and slammed my bedroom door, the echoes of our fight rattled in my skull. This morning, I woke with a pounding headache and an empty space in my chest where certainty used to be. I took a long look in the mirror, smoothing the straps of my silk dress, practicing the smile I'd display in front of our friends and family. Mark kissed me softly, apologizing for being late to breakfast, oblivious to the turmoil churning beneath my calm facade. He pinched my cheek and whispered, "You look beautiful." And I felt a pang of guilt for planning to expose his betrayal today. I spent the morning reminding myself why I fell in love with him. His laugh, the way he notices the small details, his willingness to dance in the kitchen or hold me when I'm scared. He's been my anchor through job changes, my champion when I doubted myself, and the partner I believed would weather any storm. I wondered if he still believed that, or if last night had shattered the trust he claimed was unbreakable. As I step up to the podium now, I see him sitting at the head table. His eyes are fixed on me, brimming with anticipation, or is it worry? His tailored navy suit makes him look regal, vulnerable. Around us, conversations hush. I can sense the collective curiosity. What dramatic anecdote will she share? Will she embarrass him with stories from their courtship or reveal a funny mishap from their honeymoon? They're ready for lighthearted nostalgia. I clear my throat, my voice steady on the first words. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate 10 years with us." I pause as champagne flutes clink politely. My pulse surges. "Mark, you've always known how to surprise me." I see the flicker of a smile cross his face, and I almost lose my nerve. But I force myself to continue. "You planned this beautiful evening. You organized every detail down to the last rose petal." He gives me a small nod, proud. "No one suspects what's coming next." My next sentence feels like a plunge into icy water. "But what you didn't plan for was what happened last night. When trust between us was tested in a way I never imagined." I watch his face change, the color draining from his cheeks. Guests shift uncomfortably, leaning forward. I draw in a breath and decide to speak louder to ensure every word lands exactly where I intend. My heart broke when I realized that instead of coming to me, you chose to seek answers from my sister behind my back. A gasp ripples through the crowd. Mark's hands clench into fists on the tablecloth. My voice is calm, measured. "I understand why you were scared. I understand why you wanted to know if the person standing before you was worthy of your love. But the way you went about it felt like a betrayal of everything marriage should be." Tears prick my eyes, but I blink them back. He lifts his head slowly, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. I see his struggle, shame, regret, fear. I continue, softening my tone but holding firm. "I want to use this moment in front of all our friends and family to say that I forgive you." The tension in his shoulders eases even as his tears spill over. "But I also want you to promise me, here and now, that next time, you'll trust me enough to come to me first." The world holds its breath. Mark covers his face with his hands for a moment, then removes them and stands. His voice shakes as He speaks, "I'm so sorry, my love, I promise I'll never do it again." He steps forward and wraps me in a fierce embrace. I feel his tears wet my hair. Guests rise to their feet, applauding softly as we hold each other the golden light of sunset bathing us. I realized this toast was never about assigning blame. It was about carving a new path forward, one built on honesty and respect. The crowd's applause swells, but all I hear is Mark's whispered apologies and my own vow to rebuild what was broken. And as I pull back to look into his eyes, I know that this moment, this confession in the fading light will bind us more tightly than any secret ever could. The night wore on and the garden lights glowed like fireflies caught in the branches above us. After Mark and I held each other in the center of the yard, guests mingled again under a hush of reverence. I slipped from his embrace and straightened my dress, feeling its cool silk against my skin as a soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine and grilled rosemary from the buffet tables. I took a slow breath, trying to settle the rapid flutter of my heart. The stakes had never felt higher. Yet I felt alive in a way I hadn't before, like the air itself had shifted, making room for something new to grow. I moved toward the buffet line, clutching a small plate of grilled peaches and prosciutto, and I watched Mark speak with our best friends. His shoulders were uncharacteristically relaxed, his voice warm as he recounted the story of how I'd surprised him on our first anniversary with homemade cookies shaped like little hearts. I felt a swell of affection at the tenderness in his tone. We'd come far since that shy exchange of gifts in our tiny studio apartment, and tonight was proof that we could come farther still. A lull in conversation drifted over the guests, and I noticed my younger cousin Jenny hovering nearby, her curious gaze fixed on me like a spotlight. I offered her a small smile and asked if she wanted to dance once the band began their second set. Her face lit up and she nodded enthusiastically, rushing off to find her date. It struck me then how many lives intersected here tonight: siblings, childhood friends, neighbors I barely knew but who'd welcomed me with open arms when we moved to this neighborhood 5 years ago. Each person carried a piece of our history, and tonight I'd woven our own story into theirs with that confession. The string quartet paused, and finally the DJ signaled for the band to set up. I wandered toward the asphalt dance floor where white bistro lights crisscrossed overhead. Mark caught my eye and held up 2 glasses of champagne. I changed course and accepted one, feeling the cool bubbles dance on my tongue. He tucked an errant strand of hair behind my ear and said, "You were incredible." His voice was low and earnest. I reached for his hand and we walked onto the floor together. As the first notes of a slow song filled the air, we swayed gently. I pressed my cheek to his chest and felt the steady thrum of his heartbeat. I closed my eyes, listening to the melody and the soft rustle of leaves overhead. It felt as though time had contracted, leaving only the two of us and the quiet promise that we could rebuild what had been damaged. When I opened my eyes, I saw him watching me with such intensity that I knew he was memorizing my expression. He whispered, "I owe you so much more than an apology." I looked up at him, curious. His lips quivered slightly as he continued, "I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your trust." My throat tightened. I could barely speak, but I managed to whisper back, "And I want to give you the chance." We held each other close, swaying until the song ended and applause rang out from around the dance floor. We moved to the edge of the celebration, where a small table held framed photographs of our life together. One showed us on the hiking trail, where he proposed, another at the farmer's market picking out heirloom tomatoes. I picked up a picture of us in our first home, paint splattered on our clothes and grinning like children. "Do you remember this day?" I asked. He laughed. "I do." We painted the entire living room that afternoon, then collapsed on the floor to drink our first bottle of red wine in here. We both chuckled at our younger, more carefree selves. I picked up another frame, smaller this time. It was a candid shot of me laughing while he tried to feed me cake on our wedding day. "You were so determined not to get frosting on your suit," I teased. He brushed a kiss against my temple. "And you nearly ruined that gorgeous dress," he replied, smiling. In that moment, I saw that our laughter was more than a memory. It was a bridge back to the joy we'd shared before fear interrupted us. The band launched into an upbeat tune and suddenly Jenny reappeared, tugging at my arm. She pulled me onto the dance floor once more, twisting and twirling beneath the twinkling lights. I laughed and Mark joined in, spinning us both until dizziness set in. The world felt buoyant and bright, as if the conflict of last night had been another life entirely. Yet beneath the laughter, I sensed a quiet resolve in both of us, a determination to be more open, more present, more vulnerable. Later, when the cake was cut and guests lined up for slices of vanilla bean and berry compote, Mark and I stole away to the patio overlooking the backyard. The moon was high, a silver disk above the maple leaves, and the night air had cooled. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one, his fingers brushing mine. I traced the faint freckles on his hand with my thumb, thinking about the way our hands fit together perfectly like pieces of a puzzle. I've been thinking, he began, his voice soft, about what you said tonight, about coming to you. First, I looked at him expectantly. I want us to start a new tradition, he said. Something that reminds us to check in with each other, to share what we're afraid to admit. He paused, searching my eyes. Maybe once a week, we sit down over coffee or wine, whatever. And we tell each other one thing we've been holding back. No judgment, just honesty. My heart lifted. This was the kind of simple, human ritual that could rebuild the trust between us. I smiled and raised my glass to honesty. I said, and we touched glasses. The word tasted sweet in my mouth, the promise of connection stronger than any secret. We sat on the edge of the patio, our legs dangling over the railing, and talked quietly about our plans for the next morning's hike, our hopes for the future. Around us, the party continued, but we heard only each other's voices and the soft sigh of the wind in the trees. By the time we rejoined our friends, the celebration had settled into a warm glow of contentment. Laughter bubbled up again, and the band played on. I knew that the road ahead would have its own challenges, that scars of last night would sometimes ache. But I also knew that tonight we had taken the first steps toward healing. As Mark led me back to the dance floor, I felt us moving in harmony, ready to face whatever came next together. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of our bedroom, painting golden stripes across the hardwood floor. I blinked awake to the sound of birdsong and the faint hum of traffic drifting up from the street. For a moment, I lay still, listening to the quiet, letting the memory of last night settle around me like a warm blanket. Then I glanced at the clock on the nightstand, 8:17 a.m., and felt a familiar surge of nerves mixed with excitement. Today wasn't just any day, it was the first official honesty ritual we'd agreed on, and my stomach fluttered as I thought about what I'd chosen to share. I slipped out of bed and padded into the ensuite bathroom, where I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My hair was tousled and a soft crease of sleep lingered at the corner of my eye. I smiled, remembering Mark's hand brushing mine on the patio, promising weekly check-ins. I reached for my journal on the shelf and thumbed to the page I'd marked last night before sleep claimed me. I had written one thing I'd been holding back, the persistent self-doubt that shadowed every decision I made at work, doubt I'd never voiced, even to him, because I worried he'd see me as weak. In the kitchen, Mark stood by the coffee maker, humming a gentle tune. Steam rose from the carafe, carrying the rich scent of dark roast. He looked up as I entered, and his face softened into that smile that first made me fall in love with him. Morning, he said, pouring 2 mugs. I made your favorite cafe. Diola. I inhaled the cinnamon-tinged aroma and wrapped my hands around the warm mug. Perfect, I whispered, settling onto a stool at the island. He slid onto the stool beside me and nudged a small plate toward me. On it were 2 cranberry walnut scones, still warm from the oven. I took a bite and closed my eyes at the buttery sweetness mingled with tart berries. Okay, he said, his tone calm but earnest. Your turn. My throat constricted. All morning I'd rehearsed the words in my head, but they tangled when I tried to speak. He reached across the counter and covered my hand with his. Take your time. I took a slow breath, feeling the smooth curve of his palm under mine. I've been feeling insecure at work, I began, voice soft. I keep comparing myself to younger colleagues, worried I'm not innovating fast enough. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I'm going to be passed over for the promotion I've worked so hard for. My words tumbled out and I exhaled, bracing for judgment, but he simply squeezed my hand and met my gaze. Thank you for telling me, he said, eyes bright with compassion. He set his mug down and leaned closer. I've always admired your drive and creativity. You're the most brilliant project manager I know. I felt something loosen in my chest. He continued, let's figure out a plan together maybe. Set aside time each week for you to brainstorm new ideas, or I can help you prep for meetings. I shook my head, smiling through tears. I don't need you to fix it, I said. I just needed you to know. He nodded, and I'm here. Later that afternoon, I logged onto my laptop in my home office, a cozy nook off the living room, with a bay window overlooking our backyard. The scent of freshly cut grass drifted in through the open window as I opened my inbox. My boss's email appeared at the top. Congrats on the new assignment, lead the Hudson project. My heart skipped. It was the promotion I'd been vying for, but a wave of panic followed. I stared at the subject line, then at the blank page of my journal. Without thinking, I picked up the phone and dialed Mark's number. He answered on the second ring. Hey, everything okay? I paused, gathering my thoughts. I got the assignment, I said quietly. But I'm terrified. His voice softened. Of course you are. It's a big step. I felt tears prick my eyes again. I don't know if I can do this. He offered to come home early so we could talk through the project plan. I'll bring takeout and we'll tackle it together, he promised. My heart felt lighter knowing I wouldn't face it alone. When Mark walked through the door that evening, sushi boxes in hand, I met him in the doorway and hugged him tightly. The spicy soy and ginger filled the kitchen as we settled at the table. I laid out my notes and explained the scope client demands, tight deadlines. The creative direction expected. He listened intently, asking questions that helped me clarify my own thinking. Piece by piece, my anxiety unraveled, replaced by confidence fueled by his steady support. That night, after dishes were cleared and the house quiet, I climbed into bed and reached for my journal. Under today's date, I wrote, I led the Hudson project and I didn't break. I realized that vulnerability doesn't make me weak. It makes me human, and together, Mark and I can face anything. I closed the journal and turned off the bedside lamp, feeling the contentment that comes from genuine connection. Over the next few weeks, our honesty ritual became a cherished habit. Some nights we talked about work or family tensions, other times we admitted small things, a craving we'd hidden, a fear of aging, a wish for more adventure. Each confession, no matter how trivial, wove us closer together. We learned not just to communicate, but to listen, to validate, to carry each other's burdens. One Saturday afternoon, we took our bikes to the river trail and paused on a bridge to watch kayakers slicing through the water. Mark pointed to a boat catching the current and said, "Looks effortless, doesn't it?" I laughed, "But they're paddling the whole time." He grinned. "Exactly, progress only happens when we do the work." I leaned against him, soaking in the warmth of his words. In that moment, I understood that our marriage was like that kayak, drifting forward on the river of life, guided by our shared oars of honesty and trust. As we headed home, the sun low and pink on the horizon, I realized how far we'd come since that pivotal toast in the backyard. We'd confronted fear, forgiven hurt, and forged a deeper bond than I ever imagined possible. And while I knew life would continue to challenge us with career twists, family drama, unexpected setbacks, I also knew we had the tools to navigate whatever lay ahead. Together, we'd find joy in the journey, one honest conversation at a time.